That's not what I wanted. It's being very slow, and I'm not sure why. Thinking it might be my computer. Okay. Ooh. It's fine. Just deal with it. Okay. Okay, so it looks like maybe it's working and it's no longer being glitchy. I hope. We're just going to use minimal internet and hope this works. Okay. Now I've been so caught up on trying to get this thing to work that I don't remember what I'm doing. It'll be fine, right? Okay, let's do this. Okay. It's glitching again. Okay. I'm thinking it might be my internet and my computer. This is why I didn't want to use my computer, but it's fine. I had 3 votes. All 3 were something different. So, yeah, we're going to go with it. It's already an hour into when I said I would do this, so it's fine. I was definitely fighting with this an hour before I started too. So this is the book. Hardcover. Yes, it's very small. It's has, I think I counted 2 longer short stories, 2 shorter short stories, and I didn't count how many poems. But the rest of the book is poetry and photography. So yeah, I'm excited that this is, you guys can buy it on Tuesday. You can pre-order it still right now. I also want to do a few giveaways. So it looks like I have 3 people here. So yeah, we're gonna do some giveaways. And just some other fun stuff, as well as a Q&A. A lot of funky but not horrible. Okay. What do you mean by the camera's a little funky? Okay. Oh, well. It's fine. Yeah. So I got 2 votes for both of the short stories. As much as I would love to say that I'll do both of them, I don't know how long that's going to take. I don't know. The other one was I Believed in You. That was the other vote. That poem's fun. So I just need to make a decision. I should have made a decision earlier, but I was fighting with my computer. I don't know what I want to do. I think I will read He Fell in Love with an English Major. That is a short story. It will probably be longer than a typical reading. And then I might also read I Believed in You because I like that poem. It's fun. And then the other vote was for Diablos plus Ninjas equals Paranoia. And that I feel like would just be too much for me to try and read right now. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how many people join us with all the technical difficulties. An hour late. It's fine. She was always off. So he fell in love with an English major. She was always off somewhere else, running, spying, racing, living, loving. Even when she was in the same room, she wasn't present. Sometimes she was exploring the world of the book she was reading. Sometimes she was off writing her own. She used to tell him it was the only way she was able to remain sane. He would argue it was what made her insane. She lived inside her head. Anyone or anything outside of it got ignored. The first time he met her, a mutual friend introduced them at church. She didn't say much. She was, after all, a writer, and writers, as a group, were a rather antisocial bunch. Had he asked her about her book, she would have opened up and talked to him for hours, but he didn't. Their conversation showed him just how intelligent she was, but died quickly, leaving him with a crush on this girl, whose gorgeous blue eyes and dirty blonde hair weren't just attractive, their intelligence. A lot of her friends were his friends, and he asked them about her, telling him about the book she was writing, and how it was all she would ever talk about. The more he learned about her, the more he came to like her, to the point where he could probably say he loved her, except people would say that was weird. He didn't even know her. He saw her a few times at school, and she never seemed to notice he attended the same school she did. He finally gathered enough courage to talk to her when he saw her sitting alone in the Union one day on campus. Her hair was pulled in a bun, her bright blue eyes reflecting the light from the screen of her laptop she was typing on, occasionally taking a break to eat a bite of food. "What are you working on?" he asked. It was as good as any conversation starter he could come up with, and he figured if anything, it was something she liked doing, so she would probably like talking about it. She looked up at him, a flash of recognition entering her eyes to accompany the slight smile that crossed her lips. Writing. He smiled. Hadn't her friends told him that she loved to talk about her book, and she had just given him the perfect opportunity to ask her about it? "What's the book about?" His question elicited a shy smile, which he knew from the last time. "It's about a teenage girl that comes from a spy family, but doesn't know the family history and is naturally drawn to adventurous spy-like things, which becomes useful when she has to rely on those skills to save her cousin one summer." He brightened. "It sounds really cool. I can't wait to read it." And he meant it. He had been friends with some writers in high school and had heard his fair share of subpar book themes, but hers seemed pretty well thought out and planned, equal to the spy novels he had read growing up. She looked down sheepishly. Only if you like a romantic element. I know not very many guys do. He looked at her confused. Who told you? I mean, you'd be hard-pressed to find any movie or book that doesn't have some element of romance. You can't even watch Star Wars without seeing the Han and Leia relationship or the Anakin and Padme relationship. My favorite book series was a prominent romantic storyline. What book series? Heard of it, she said, confused. He shook his head in disappointment. Oh man, you're missing out. The title characters this bull cheerleader end up dating. I don't think I've ever been so invested in a fictional. He nodded. Let me know when you do. I'd be more than happy to discuss it with you. He pulled out his phone. I could give you my number so you can. She blushed, but gave him her phone number anyway. His phone buzzed in his pocket a week later when he was in strategic communication theory in practice class, and since he was back a few rows from the teacher, he decided to slide it out of his pocket to check it discreetly. It was a text from her. Just finished the book. You're right. It's a great book. I'm going to need the second one. Can I borrow it? And books were their connection. Fortunately, he took her to a Greek cafe in Bountiful near to where they both lived. The food wasn't too expensive, them being college students and all, but it was still very good. The only problem was the restaurant never had very many people there, so despite it being the Friday night rush, it was a little too quiet for her to say much. So what did you like best about the book? He finally asked her, trying to get her to start talking. She shrugged. I think I liked the entire book a lot. I was annoyed by the end. I was reading and going, okay, I'm ready for them to... Oh, wait, it's over? Yeah, I didn't like that. Evans is definitely the master of the cliffhanger, isn't he? He smirked. You have no idea. It only gets worse. She smiled, but the silence resonated. So have you done much more writing? He asked. Always a good way to get her talking. About her book. Ask about her book. Not much. I've been doing a lot of reading for my lit history class, she replied. It's frustrating because I have so many good ideas and I really want to write, but instead I'm stuck reading Pride and Prejudice, and anytime I try to write, I end up writing with an Austinian accent, which doesn't go over well for a spy novel. He laughed. I can imagine not. Yeah, Spencer doesn't talk like a gentleman from the Regency period, so if I'm writing with an Austinian accent, my readers might get confused, she continued. Less confused. He's the love interest of my main character, Devin. They go to high school together and he ends up being a spy and recruits Devin into the training program he's part of, she explained. I thought she went to save her cousin. He certainly had sparked a conversation now. Her friends had been right. She always had plenty to say about her books. She shrugged. In book 1, yes, she's back in high school and she meets Spencer and the real adventure begins. So now there were 2 books. You have it all figured out, don't you? Led them here, to their first kiss. Hollywood likes to idolize the first kiss, telling people that you felt sparks when you came. She was timid, it being her first kiss, but she wouldn't tell him that. He assumed it wasn't, knowing how beautiful she was, and thinking that she had boyfriends before, but he was wrong. Even if he didn't, that it was one word from her shattered it all. Spencer. He said, I love you, Spencer. He closed his eyes. He knew that she lived in her books, but this was more painful than he could imagine. He could yell or he'd laugh. He tried to just remain as calm as possible. Please tell me you didn't just call me your main character's love interest's name. She looked horrified. They both knew she had. Maybe she didn't realize the moment, but as soon as it left her mouth, she was biting her lip, making the face she was now. Because we just had our first kiss. Our first kiss. And instead of telling me you loved me, you said you love your character. I love you. But do you even know my name? He asked, his frustration slipping through his facade. Yes, I'm sorry, I meant Ryan. I'm just writing today, and it was a lot of Devin and Spencer scenes, and he was her inspiration to keep writing. Devin and Spencer had been characters before she met Ryan, but her relationship with Ryan was what had given her the desire to keep writing, the element of love, real love, that had been missing before. But she was shy, and instead of telling him that, she kept it in, but wrapped her arms around him, bringing her head to his shoulder, giving him a hug. I'm sorry, Ryan, I love you, I really do. He wrapped his arms around her, taking the smell of her Garnier shampoo from her hair. I love you too, he whispered into her ear. He took a few more deep breaths, trying to accept her apology and move on. He loved her too much to give up over her calling him the name of one of her characters. They didn't spend very much time together. Between her English homework and his communications homework, she had her TV shows she'd binge watch, half of dating. She always found it when he watched TV with her. They all had a romantic element to them. Sure, he had been the first to admit that there wasn't much in the way of entertainment without the romantic element, but she became a bit too obsessed with the romantic element. She even liked the romantic element in Great Expectations, which had him concerned because Estella, the love interest in the story, was more than he had to admit loving her was becoming more painful than rewarding. Meanwhile, Devon and Spencer quickly became the perfect couple in her book. Ryan would have been lying had he said he never wished to jump into the book and ruin it all by telling Devon someone else loved Spencer. He wanted to tell Devon that his girlfriend was in love with Devon, but he would imagine it sometimes. But Devon and Spencer were so perfect for each other that they would still get past it. Never once did he imagine a conversation between the three of them, Devon, Spencer, and Ryan, asking Devon and Spencer what his girlfriend's inspiration for the perfect couple was. He assumed he heard from within. But now he knew that behind the facade of innocence was a girl that could destroy him with one word: Spencer. The book idea that he had first thought was genius was less and less appealing to read because he didn't really want to read about what she thought their relationship should look like. And sure, the frequency with which she had called him Spencer instead of Ryan was decreasing, but the punch of defeat that hit him every time it left her mouth still had the same intensity, if not more. His heart broke just a little every time until he wasn't sure he had any heart left. Spencer's just wonderful, he had overheard her telling one of their friends as he was walking up. He slipped his hand in hers, and as she looked over at him, she told him, "I was just telling Michaela that you brought me lunch the other day because I had been up late writing an essay and forgot to bring food." He had smiled and looked at her and replied with a forced smile, "I'd hate for you to go hungry." "I'm just obsessed with the romantic element in any literary or film form," she admitted to a friend. He was walking up behind her, getting ready to surprise her by wrapping his arms around her waist and picking her up. He hadn't seen her in a few days because he'd been stuck working on a huge communications project and hoped that it meant she was on the path to recovery, as the first step to fixing an issue is always to recognize the problem. But as she continued, he doubted that that was the case. "I think it's because I wish I could have a relationship that perfect," she said. Because he put chip and she was still wanting more. He wasn't good enough, and I was the behind-the-scenes guy. He brushed so busy running, doing our own things, he explained. "I just throw everything I can into this relationship and it still doesn't seem to be working." "If you don't think I'm putting in enough effort into the relationship, I can try harder," she promised. "It's not fair to either of us to keep throwing so much into a relationship that will only ever fail," he replied. "Look at it this way. Instead of wasting time with me, you can go back to writing and finally finish your book. You are a wonderful author, and I will only ever hold you back." He left before she cried. They didn't talk again over the course of the final year she was still at college. They saw each other a couple of times. Sometimes he waved, sometimes she waved. Sometimes they pretended they didn't see each other. They paid pretty well, and he was thrilled to have a good use for his degree. All of his hard work had paid off. Summer in London reached the New York Times bestsellers list. It started to show up more and more in the Barnes & Noble that Ryan frequented, and the constant bombardment of her name made it so she was never far from his mind. More than once he wondered if he hadn't given up on the relationship to the woman who was supposed to be his wife. Her book had been on the New York Times bestseller list for 3 weeks. There was nothing like being forced to work with your ex to bring back the memories and frustrations. As any good people find talking points if he hadn't read the book. As he opened the book, he flipped through page by page until he came to the dedication page, "To do what I love," while